Hello, all. You're going to love this episode of Leadership Hacks, where I had the opportunity to speak to Yinka Ewuola about money mindset and having a positive relationship with money. We talked about intentional conversations with kids, pregnancy in the workplace and the workplace rejecting you, identity as a Black woman, faith, and future vision. I'm looking forward to you having the opportunity to get the same learning that I did from this. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. Hello and welcome to another Leadership Hacks podcast. And today I am fortunate to have the effervescent Yinka Ewuola, who is a fantastic human being. She is somebody I have been following on LinkedIn, and I've had the pleasure and the opportunity to meet. I've been on a couple of Yinka's live webinars where you are literally coaching and explaining to people how they can live a more fortuitous life than the one that they have at that present time. Yinka, thank you for joining, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you today.
Obi, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm really looking forward to diving straight in.
And let's do that then. So I guess my first question, Yinka, and this is one for the audience, and I know you've done these things before, but I'm going to do it slightly differently. Right now, as I look at you and as I follow you, you're a successful individual on so many different levels, whether that be spiritually, whether that be from a family perspective or financially, or the work in which you're doing. But at some stage, you are a young child. And that I guess I'd like to go back to that first early stage to understand how the woman I'm speaking to now has developed over the years. So what was your school life like? What was your home life like? What are the things that shaped you in those earlier years before now?
Okay, well, the first thing to say that is I am a Nigerian woman. We are Yoruba, and we grew up at South London, specifically around the Bermondsey and Peckham areas. So one of the things that really characterized my upbringing was this cultural duality. So when we left our homes, I'm a kid of the 80s, so we were in working class, Bermondsey, Peckham areas, and we very much experienced all that entailed. You know, we came from a very Christian home, and my parents to this day, you know, very much grew up in a very loving, close-knit family unit. But inside our home, it was a little bit like the Nigerian embassy, and we were very much culturally Nigerian. And yet when we left the house, we were confronted with British culture. We were confronted with, you know, the things that Sharon and Tracy were doing.
Yeah.
And so it was a very interesting experience from the jump, in terms of essentially having to learn two languages, two cultures, two ways of being, and really supporting yourself to survive in both those cultures that you essentially could move into at the drop of a hat. So there were lots of laughter. There was lots of laughter. There was lots of love. Food is my mother's love language for sure. Education and knowledge.
I mean, is that not every Nigerian's love language? You say your mother's.
It probably is, but then my mum is also a catering and food consultant to
Oh,
this day.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Sure. She's deep in the
she sits
industry.
on the London Food Board. So
Oh, fantastic.
she took her food passion to a whole new level. And I was saying that education and learning and knowledge was probably my father's love language. And
Right.
so he, you know, would quiz us on the capital cities of the world. And, you know, he would buy like every single batch of Encyclopedia Britannica.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a
You had the
home.
huge ones, did you, on the bookshelves?
Oh
Do you
yeah,
remember the size of them?
the big ones, the small ones, yeah, it was such a vibe. And yeah, it was a home that, you know, I have nothing but love and gratitude to my parents. They really forged a home and a space that created I was going to say four, but that would be a lie. Yes, I'm one of four siblings. I'm the second of four siblings, but actually the number of children that my parents raised is probably in the 30s, if not more. So many kids came through our home. So many people had our address as the first place they stopped after they came through Heathrow Airport. My parents, you know, they were and continue to be incredibly community minded, and they really instilled in us a few of some of the strongest core values I have even today were definitely forged out of that time. And it was interesting because it was a house full of love, but it definitely wasn't a house, where we experience financial abundance. But it always reminded me that your heart of service and your heart of giving, you don't have to wait for financial abundance to really live out that value. But it was part of what has made me so committed to having financial abundance, because I saw what they did with very little, and I'm committed to making sure I have a whole lot more so that I can do a whole lot more.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic answer. It's and I remember growing up myself in a very similar household. I am the second of four children too, so we're twinning on that.
Chelsea, going
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
win.
But you know what? We didn't live in financial abundance, but we equally didn't. We did not live in poverty
Mhm,
either.
mhm.
But I know we wanted for nothing, and my childhood, I look back with so many fond memories, was just awesome. If I had the opportunity, I would relive it again, and I wouldn't change a thing. It was just brilliant. It really was. You mentioned there though, when in explaining the whole British culture, Nigerian culture, and I wonder, from an identity perspective, was that something that did you ever struggle with identity back then? And what's your mindset on identity now?
I didn't struggle.
You
I've
didn't, yeah.
never struggled with my identity. I've always known myself to be a Nigerian woman, Yoruba woman, a woman from Ondo State, from Irele, from my dad, from Iboteko, from my mom. It's never crossed my mind that I was anything else.
Right,
Yes, I was born outside of the country of my origin and heritage, but that has never fazed me in the slightest. The other thing that makes me laugh though is, I was born in Guy's Hospital, which is next to London Bridge. I cannot, if I could count the number of times, due to fantastically racist Bermondsey, that I was told to go back
right.
where I was born like a stone, like
Yeah, a stone throw away.
couldn't be more
Yeah,
London than London Bridge.
yeah,
That was where I was born. But I grew up with my environment telling me very clearly that I was not from there, and
yeah,
I wasn't particularly welcome. And that was normal and that was okay. I had a sense of belonging. I knew where I was, I knew where I was from. And I continue to know that. And I feel very grounded, as much as, please do not hear what I'm not saying. Racism sucks. It's terrible. No one should have to go through it. But for me, I did. I remember my very first experience of racism. I was 2.5. I was two
right.
and a half, and someone had decided to use dog poo to write a message on our front door. So yeah, that those kinds of experiences are really etched. I remember my mum bursting into tears. I remember my dad being really upset. For me, they had used the old National Front symbolism. And for me, I was like, what? Somebody doesn't know how to do their letters properly. That was
Yeah,
my first thought. And at the time, I didn't realize what the significance of what I was looking at. But in some ways, when everything around you is telling you in so many different ways that you are not from here, you absolutely do cling to where you believe yourself to be from. And it's interesting. I definitely feel more Nigerian when I'm not in Nigeria, because when I get to Nigeria,
yeah.
they also like to remind me that I'm not quite Nigerian
Go
enough.
home.
Right.
You need to go home.
Yeah, no, right. I'm not quite Nigerian enough. I'm definitely referred to as Oyinbo when I get there, which
Yeah,
is the Yoruba word for white person. But that doesn't faze me in the same way. I get it, I speak with a very British accent. I have grown up and imbibed British culture, but that doesn't have an impact on my identity, not least because fundamentally I gather my sense of identity from my religious and faith-based paradigm. And so I am who God, as I believe, and I am who He says I am. And that isn't about a country. That's even less about a country. That's even less about an ethnic identity or even a religion.
It's as a
That's
human being.
Yeah, that's a human thing. That's a values thing.
Yeah.
And ultimately, however people identify in their own identities, for me, I see humans and I see, um, a person like I'm a person. And that for me is most important.
Yeah. One of the things I've picked up from talking to you previously is you're almost just a wonderful life coach. And I think there are going to be people who will want to get in contact with you after this just to talk about identity and some of the struggles that they may be having. How has your identity as a Black woman shaped your leadership philosophy then in approaching how you're empowering others?
That's a great question. And I would say that it actually has a significant impact. So, as a Black woman living in a non-Black country, also having been raised in the patriarchy, I'm very aware of the concept of othering. And I'm very aware of being a non-mainstream version of
Mm.
a human. And so, for me as a leader, it's interesting. I was having a conversation earlier today with a colleague. The idea of things like inclusion and ensuring that everyone has the ability to thrive, it isn't something that for me I have to um I have to focus on. It's not something I focus on because it is the lens through which I see the world. I am in a world that isn't designed specifically for someone who looks like or thinks like or has experienced the world like me. And
Hmm.
so I'm constantly having to think about how to adapt my experiences, my learning, my knowledge in order to enable me to thrive because there is no other option for me but to thrive. I have zero interest in mere survival. I have zero interest in living anything other than the best version of my life. And so, but it is really important for me, therefore, that if that is a mandate that I have given myself, for anybody else who has a similar mandate, I think it's really important for me to use my experiences to be able to support that foundation for their progress too. And so, as a Black woman and someone who therefore has minoritized experiences, I think it's important for me to make use of those minoritized experience to see, not just those who have similar minoritized experiences to me, but also anyone who, isn't, for whom the system wasn't built for. It's really important to me that they also have a sense of understanding of how they get to navigate for their best life and their best selves. And so some of those things, like, for example, redefining success. That's a really important. We haven't realized until fairly recently, but success has been highly weaponized. The concept of professionalism also highly weaponized. And therefore, we find so many people racing, they've got their ladders and they're racing up these ladders only to find that they've put those ladders against walls that they have nothing to do with and have nothing to
Mm.
do with what they actually want. And so it's been a really powerful shaping tool because it causes me to think more broadly, again, to lean into human, but also to really enable, facilitate a redefined version of what it takes for different people experiencing life in very different ways to create a sense of fulfillment and achievement that matters to them.
Yinka, can you give an example of where that ladder analogy that you've just given, putting ladders up against walls that we just have no business trying to be involved with? What do you mean by that? Can you just deep dive into that just for a
Of course.
moment?
Yeah, I mean, and I back to my childhood, if you'd have asked me when I was 5 years old what I wanted to be, I would have told you a pharmacist.
Okay.
Now, if you'd have asked me how to spell pharmacist, of course I would be able to spell it. I was, reading at 2.5. So I was a smart kid. And my dad said that being a pharmacist was an awesome thing. He had indoctrinated my elder sister into wanting to be a doctor. He'd indoctrinated me into wanting to be a pharmacist. So that was what I told you I wanted to be. Now, as I repeat that to you, that makes me laugh almost out loud. Not quite appropriate for the podcast, but it makes me laugh out loud. I have no business being a bloody pharmacist. That is
Why?
that because I have zero interest in working in that way, in
Right.
engaging with people in that way.
Sure.
My brain isn't purely scientific, it's very creative.
Mm.
I love problem solving in a completely different way. If I'd have ever become a pharmacist, I'd have been the most miserable one. And it
Right.
isn't because we do not need pharmacists, and it isn't because it's
Sure.
not a worthy
It's just not
profession.
your passion. It's not
It's
where your heart is.
it's not even it's not even my interest. Passion is
Sure.
strong.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't care
Yeah.
about I care that the pharmacists that I use and I have are great at what they do.
Yeah.
And if I became a pharmacist, I would have been good at it, but I don't care about it. And so, but yeah, at that time, I read all the books. I began looking into all, science and this is what it means to be if I had carried on down that vein, I would have run up that pharmacy ladder
Mm.
and then I would have, and again, knowing my own determination and um, stubbornness, I would have got to the top of that pharmacy ladder and then I would have been like miserable at the top of a ladder that I had spent
I'm with you.
decades running up
Sure.
and it wasn't. And then I would have discovered that I'd put my ladder against, I was holding the wrong ladder and I had leaned it against the wrong wall.
Yeah. No, that fantastic answer, and I think that you've given a level of clarity there so that the audience can understand what you meant by that comment. Something's just come to me. I've heard a rumor because you just talked about reading at 2 and 2.5. I've heard a rumor that you, when you went to school, you were put a year ahead. Or something. I've heard something. You were put a year ahead, or you were too smart for the year that you were in, or you were just too bored.
Bro, that's
And
not a
I
rumor.
think this is important. Wait, I think this is important because the audience need to know what they're in the presence of right now. Is that right? What-
Bro, that is not a rumor. I legit told you that. And yes, yeah, I did. So as I said, my father's love language was knowledge, education, like museums, books. Like I used to read the dictionary for fun. I was that kid.
I was not that kid.
I was that kid. I'm an introvert and every other member of my family was extroverted and Yoruba culture is extra in the extroverted.
Yeah, yeah.
I was a full-blown weirdo. I used to disappear and read and everyone, like my parents particularly, were like, why are you always trying to be by yourself? Come and sit with us. Come and sit with us. But what I would say is that I loved knowledge. I loved learning. And one of the things I think in the context of the significant discrimination and challenges that my parents experienced, one of their really loud and clear messages to us is no matter what happens, no one can take your knowledge and education away from you.
Mm.
And so they really instilled in us the importance of studying, learning, knowledge. And as a daddy's girl, daddy said read, so I read. And so I got to the point in primary school, the equivalent I think is year 5 now, where I was bored and I was saying to my parents, I don't want to go to school anymore. I'm not learning anything. I'm bored. And they were like, well, kiddo, we need the childcare. So you are going to school, whether you like it or not. And therefore I had to, continue to go to school. But in a very short version of a long story, the school decided that they would put me in the year ahead. So I was in year 5 in the morning. I was in year 6 in the afternoon. All the year 5 class hated me. All the year 6 class hated me. But yeah, I began learning in the year 6 class and completed primary school. And then I ended up going to secondary school when I was 10, completing my GCSEs a year early when I was 15 and my A-levels a year early when I was 17.
And then what did you do?
And then I went on a gap year. I went traveling around the world after having got my first job. And then I went off to uni to study, but also to discover a bit more of my own unique voice. And that was such an incredibly powerful time. I loved my uni days. I still have friends that I'm friends with today from that time. And yeah, I began to really unveil more of the person that I am today, definitely through that period.
What one thing do you remember most about that gap year and traveling? Is there one thing that immediately comes to mind? It could be anything.
Yeah, I loved when we got to Far East Asia. So we went to Singapore. Um, and it was the most fascinating experience of my life. It was such a sanitized, very interesting culture.
Right.
Um, there was, but we weren't there for very long, but honestly, it felt like everyone on the island knew that we were there because it was, well, first of all, as someone who is 6 foot tall, as a woman who is 6 foot tall, I was definitely a physical outlier in that environment. And there was like zero boundaries. Like people would walk up to you and touch you. And I found
Yeah.
that really, I
Yeah.
am not somebody who enjoys the encroachment on my personal space. But it was also just really great to be in a completely different culture. Singapore was, and Hong Kong and Singapore, they're both really, at the time that we were there, they were very culturally homogenous environments.
Hmm.
So everybody looked like them, and like literally, even the backpackers didn't look like us. And so, for so many people, definitely a lot of the children, we were the first Black people that they'd ever seen.
Yeah. I experienced something very similar when I went to India and toured Rajasthan for a couple of weeks. But I found it interesting in so many different ways.
Yeah, and it was just, what it was that was so fascinating? The idea, like, we had a really torrid experience in Australia, and they just could not believe that an 18-year-old could have a job, earn enough money to buy a ticket to come to Australia. They thought I was a drug dealer, and they kept us in the airport for almost a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was horrid. I've never
Wow.
been back to Australia since. But what was so fascinating was over and over again being underestimated on site was so fascinating. And I really like the round the world trip was definitely one of the defining moments in my thinking, in my experience, and
Would you recommend it to other young people?
100%. I haven't told him yet, but my kids, I'm kicking them out for a year after their A-levels.
Well, kids, your mum's telling you now.
Well, no, there's something so powerful that cannot be taught that you learn when you travel.
Hmm.
Like, your it's obviously very true that your experience of anything is a sample of one.
Yeah.
But when you live in when you are experiencing your own individual sample of one and you're surrounded by other people experiencing other very similar samples of one, we get into this idea that our experience is the common or the world experience.
Yeah.
And the only way that you really see and understand that differently is when you go to other cultures and what they think, what they do, how they roll is nothing like you.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
it was so the things I learnt, the things that I unlearnt, the things that I discovered about myself, about others, it was incredible. And it was such a gift to be given that so early on. I was 18, 17, 18. And um yeah, it was a long time ago now.
Yeah, see, I did something very similar, but between my 20s and 30s. But
Okay.
I'm not going to go into too much detail. I think we need to record another podcast just on traveling because I think we could exchange stories for quite a while. But fortunately for the UK, fortunately for us, you came back. You came back, and I know you went into the work environment. One of the things you've talked about is being marginalized or being part of a vulnerable group. And I know I have spoken to several women now around, and I've posted on this several times as well, around being pregnant in the workplace and what that means and what comes with that. Because whether it's naivety or ignorance, as a man, there are just things you do not consider that women actually consider. And the amount of times I've been left with my jaw on the floor thinking, wow, I didn't even think that that would be a thing that a woman would have to consider when it comes to their career. What was your experience like? Because I know you've mentioned you're a boy mum, a proud boy mum, but before they were fully fledged boys, they were in your tummy growing. What was that whole experience like for you in the workplace?
Well, it's interesting you say that because I only experienced pregnancy once in the corporate workplace.
Okay.
My experience of it made me promise myself that I would never experience it again. And I was so fortunate to be somebody who, when I went through pregnancy, I was physically well. So
Okay.
I didn't have very many. I did have, the first time you're pregnant, you have no point of reference. And so, but I was well, the day before my son was born, I was up a ladder to the chagrin of my neighbors cleaning the
Yinka,
windows.
stop it.
Yeah, I'm
Stop
nesting,
it.
nesting. You know what I mean? I was well. I was well. And even though I was well, I was tired. I was adjusting to a new body. I was adjusting to, again, I'm someone who is very precious about my personal space. So I was adjusting to a new way of being in the world. And I will say that the workplace that I was in at the time was less than supportive. I will also preface what I'm about to say with the fact that I ultimately left corporate while I was pregnant under an NDA. And so there are elements that, I will share and, keep
Sure.
asking me. And then if we get to an NDA point or
Mhm.
whatever, I'll stop. Because I am someone who honors my contracts, even shady, horrid contracts, but I honor my word. But yeah, it wasn't the most supportive environment. It was made to seem like it was an inconvenience. I was always a top performer. Like, I was always a top performer until I got pregnant, and then all of a sudden I was considered not a top performer, even though my performance had improved, even though I had the data to back it up. Even though, when I was leaving, people were pulling me aside saying things like, I can't believe this is happening. This is so grossly unfair. And I'm like, whispering that to me tells me nothing. In
Mm.
fact, whispering that to me is just disrespectful because I'm not the person who needs to hear this. There's no point in you telling me this if you were going to do nothing about it. Yeah, it was a very interesting time. It was frustrating because ultimately you have different instincts are firing at you when you're about to be a mum for the first time.
Mm.
You kind of have it in mind that you want to do your very best. And at the same time, you feel like events are out of your control. You have no idea when that baby's coming. I mean, you do, but you don't know the due date. You don't know the time. You don't know what labor's going to be like. And your number one priority is a safe and healthy baby.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, it really shaped. Again, it was a very defining moment for me in my life, one that I look back on now with gratitude. I'm grateful for it because I know that everything happens for me, not to me. But in the moment, it was tears. It was fear. It was incredibly upsetting. It was ridiculously dramatic, and it was unnecessary. But it also means that as I build my organization and as I, intend to hire and support women who will ultimately be pregnant in their own lifetimes, I'm so excited to have the opportunity to support those women in a way that I never was supported, to help them to understand that they are valued and they're not simply a vessel for a baby. They're not an inconvenience to the workforce. They are not costing the business money or any of those messages. I'm so excited that in that season, they're coming with new perspectives and new ideas, and they're going to make their own lives, their children's lives, and our organization better by being pregnant.
And I think this is one of the things I really love about you. You have such a positive mindset, and one of the things that I try. You do. Well, listen to your response there, or listen back to your response. Whilst you still have the scars and you won't forget the experience you have, and it was a bad experience. It's abhorrent what happened. You are using that experience for positivity moving forwards, and I find, and genuinely, I respect you for that. So let me reframe my question then. What advice would you give to women about advocating for themselves when they're expecting? And how can organizations better support employees instead of seeing them as a liability?
So, the thing I would first of all say to any women in any state of womanhood, and again, pregnancy isn't the one that is the most challenging. It's probably miscarriage, menopause. Like, there are so many other chapters in womanhood that are tough. And so the thing I would say is the first thing to know is that you are never a liability at any point. That is something that the society in the workplace is very quick to make women feel that the minute that they don't align to the male journey of progress, and I use that very specifically, it is a male journey of progress that we are being encouraged to align to. So the minute that there needs to be, caring responsibilities, parenthood, anything that doesn't quite fit the mold, then all of a sudden it's a problem. And the advocacy in the workplace begins with acceptance with self. And so it is really important to understand that you are never a liability. You are never a problem. This is simply about the workplace expressing to you what their values are and for you to make a decision about whether you align with those values or not. And so when it comes to advocating for yourself, the other thing that is really important to note, because, for example, I agonized about signing that NDA because I felt very strongly about I felt like signing the NDA was selling my voice, and my voice is incredibly important to me as well. You can tell, never bloody shut up. But I was like, I don't want to sell my voice. But then I was like, but I need to resolve this issue. I need to make sure I do not give myself any form of illness as a result of the stress of this scenario.
Yeah.
And I also need to protect my unborn child. And so I did sign the NDA, much to my chagrin. But for years after, I was like, I sold my voice. I sold not being able to tell my full story in this scenario. And that burned me. And I'm grateful because fundamentally, it's very easy when you're a person like me who can think 7 steps ahead. You kind of get into your own hype of believing that you will make all these perfect decisions. You will never make a mistake. You'll never do what you claim you wouldn't do. Long story short, that particular point was so valuable to me because it reminded me that I'm human.
Yeah.
It reminded me that I can't always fight every fight, win every battle, and everything does not go my way. And I'm so ever grateful for that particular lesson because it gave me more compassion, more empathy, and a recognition that doing the best that you can with what you have in the moment is actually what adult life is about. Adult life isn't about perfect decisions. It's about optimal decisions. The best decisions that you can with what you have. And up to that point, I was still trying to do everything perfectly, make everything it didn't go my way. As I said, it burned me for a while. And then I was like, actually, no, I'm good. If I had to go, again, you couldn't get me to sign an NDA in that context for love nor money now. I would shout that story from the rooftops. But that's who I am today. And who I am today was built out of that experience before. So it is just to say that if you do not get to create a scenario that you want out of the situation that you have, knowing that doing your best with what you're given at the time, in the season that you're in, is the definition of thriving. And it's really important that you honor that rather than trying to uphold yourself to an impossible standard. And then as for organizations, as a business strategist, I spend a lot of time talking to businesses. I spend a lot of time thinking about helping businesses and helping to make things work. And I think it's really important to recognize that businesses have their own challenges and focuses, but you will only ever be as good as the way you treat your people. There is no getting around that. And so for me, I feel very strongly that creating organizations that lead with a human first approach. And, this is part of what I talk about in terms of taking a cash flow approach to business. But if you employ people, every person that comes into your organization is representative of a swathe of other people, their families, their dependents, their friends, their communities. And so just enabling people, organizations to recognize the impact that they have in people's lives, I think is also a very important part and role that they have to play.
Yeah. And I think, again, just to add to that, for me, I'm big on actions over words, because you see all of these organizations that will say we're human first, we're people first, and it is literally just words on a pamphlet on a website. It's action for me, and it's showing that people genuinely are first. I think equally, you are as good as your people and the processes that you have in place, right? So make sure that your processes, make sure that your policies that are supporting individuals, whether they're pregnant, whether they're sick, whether they're going, if they're going through difficult times, all link up together. And that's the way in which you're directing your business, because too often I hear it and don't see anything, or what I see is the complete opposite, and that breaks my heart.
And that's the thing, one of the things I spend a lot of time talking about is values. And for far too many organizations, they wear their values like a t-shirt. And, they're like, oh, we're doing black squares this season. It's,
Yeah,
you know, and then, when the tide changes and public opinion changes, they take that t-shirt off and then they put on a different t-shirt.
yeah,
And I'm always minded that I have zero interest in anybody or anything that behaves in that way. That's the value that they value most is performance.
mm,
I'm not interested in performance or performative actions. What I care about, I value honesty above performance. So if you don't believe in the values that I believe in, then
yeah,
please tell me so that I know and I can make a decision. And
absolutely.
so we can't wear our values like t-shirts or clothes. Our values are our skin. Our values are the lenses through which we see the world. And for me, I think it is really important that we continue to insist on A, behaving that way as people, and B, holding organizations up to similar standards in order for us to make more informed decisions.
Yinka, as a segue into my next question, just I am just going to refer to the previous question around your experience within the workplace
Mhm,
whilst pregnant. I honestly believe that God has a plan for us all, and we do
mhm,
not know what that plan is.
mhm,
Um, it is very possible that we would not be having this conversation, and you would not be sharing with the thousands of people who will see this podcast about your experience and therefore touching people's lives. It's very possible that you would not be the Yinka that I am speaking to today because you weren't shaped by that experience or other experiences. I'm not just referring to the one. You have, how does your Christian faith, because I know you're a lady of faith, how does that shape and influence the business decisions that you are making on a daily basis and how you're showing up as a leader in the industry?
Great question. I actually read an article the other day, it's total segue, about saying that when you're on a podcast, don't say great question. Like it just that made me laugh as I just said that. But it is a great question. But the reason why it's a great question is because the shaping of it now is so it doesn't shape the decisions of now because it shaped everything before this point, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is this. I no longer ask myself, what should I do as a Christian? Because Christian isn't what I do. Christian is who I am.
Mm,
And so I ask myself, what do I believe is right? And I do what is right. And so, if I make a mistake, I hold my hands up the fastest. I will apologize. I have it in mind to ensure that I don't do any harm. I have it in mind to be a person of integrity, which means that my yes means yes and my no means no. And so it's interesting
and you do what
to
you say you're going to do.
absolutely. And where I don't do what I say I'm going to do, I proactively will tell you why it didn't happen and I will
Mm.
strive to put it right or to say it's no longer a priority or to tell you that it's not available anymore and I can't do any better. But it's interesting to the question you asked I thought it was a great question because many people feel like because again, it's the difference between what you do and who you are. And as I said, Christian isn't what I do, it's
Yeah.
who I am. And so because it shapes my person and who I am, it's who I am that shapes how I show up in my business as a leader, as somebody with a platform. And so what it means though is that I am very conscious of my behavior publicly. I am very clear about the fact that the internet lasts forever. And even though my children are not yet on the social platforms that I use, they will be in the future.
Mm.
And screenshots last forever. And so I am always holding myself up to that standard. I don't consider myself accountable to strangers on the internet, but I do consider myself accountable to the fact that I've been given the role of a lifetime to nurture three of the most incredible future men on the planet into adulthood. And part of how I do that is how I show up in my business, is how I interact online, is how I deal with humans who will human and people who people when things go wrong, when people treat me poorly, badly, unfairly. They are watching my example. They're not going to do what I say. They're kids. They're going to do what they see me do. And so it is so much a part of, again, values embodiment is essentially comes from the verse in the Bible which says, by their fruits shall ye know them. It is my intention for me to be known by my fruits. And I think that that is often something that people don't recognize. And so, yeah, talk is cheap and people are very good at saying the right things. You know, AI will help you write incredible hooks and amazing posts.
Yeah.
But you know them by their fruits, not just by their words.
Absolutely. And when they turn up, the individual that you're speaking to doesn't marry up with the virtual person
Even
that you've been
the
speaking
profile
to.
picture,
What?
the
It's
profile
a new
picture
world of catfishing, I guess. It's a new
right.
world of catfishing.
The profile picture is totally different. I am who I am now, more or less. I will be a very similar person if we meet in person. I'm a similar person when we write. When I write, I'm a similar person if you chose to work with me in close proximity. And that it matters to me.
Yeah.
Congruence matters to me. Congruence is an extension, in my opinion, of integrity. And so it is important to be the kind of person who is a person of my word and to take that into all the different spheres and facets of what that gets to me.
Yeah, I share a very similar mindset, and I frame it slightly differently, which is my reputation means so much to me. And that's but my reputation is, and then it's literally everything that you've just spoken about, and just being an upholding good Christian in the community, and a person that people look to and say, you know what, that's just a good human being.
I was gonna say,
If I ever manage to achieve that, sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, indeed. I don't know if I would. I'm not a very good Christian. I will also preface that, and I don't say that as a
No,
badge
but
of
yeah, but
honor.
I'm trying to be. I'm not saying I am. I'm
Well,
trying.
what I would say is that I am trying to be the best version of who I believe God has called me to be,
Yeah,
and part of that, because of who He's made me to be, is to challenge what we're told has always been.
yeah,
And I know that some people find that very difficult, not least in church settings. So that's what I mean about I am not somebody who is presented with data, insights, facts, ideas without interrogation, without critical analysis, and I get it. You know, some people are like, well, you believe, one of my friends is staunchly atheist
hmm
and calls God Sky Daddy.
okay,
Yeah, and it's interesting. People often ask, you know, how can you be friends with somebody who doesn't believe something that is so fundamentally important to you? And I'm like, well, I can, because ultimately, as I said, my Christian value, when we list out our values, yes, my faith is a huge foundational, non-negotiable part of mine. And, you know, atheism and him not believing in God is an important and powerful part of his. But many of our other values are actually very aligned. And so it is important to me to challenge ideas, to critically. And he's like, well, you believe in a sky daddy and there's no evidence. And I'm like, I get it. I understand that there are elements of the Christian faith that if you do not believe in it seem ridiculous and not illogical. And I'm like 100%, but logic isn't the only house of truth.
yeah,
You know, we don't fully understand metaphysics. We don't understand manifestation. We don't understand, but I'm fully somebody who believes in miracles, and miracles by their very nature are fully illogical. So I choose to adult and I choose to remember that I can, to seemingly opposite things can be true at the same time. I don't have a problem with things not fitting into neat boxes in every scenario. I don't have a um imperative to be able to explain every inch of my life through the lens of logic. So, yeah, I think it's a very important concept, particularly in this day and age where so many people struggle to disagree respectfully and to disagree in a way that enables them to learn and to grow. I didn't default, even though I was born into a Christian family, I didn't default into the Christian religion. I went off, I learned, I read books, I attended and spoke to other people of other faiths and other religions, and then decided that I wanted to continue in my Christian faith. But again, when I did made that decision, it was with a very different lens and with a very new way of seeing the world. And so I think the importance of having that respect for humans as humans is really fundamental. It means that I will never behave in a way differently. I would never treat someone with less respect because they have a lesser title.
Sure.
That particular behavior, I find.
Don't. It's infuriating. I have worked with
And that's
people
the other thing.
who hierarchy means everything to them. Title is and then when they get it, I always say, titles are given, right? So power is given, but respect is earned. Surely you want to be a leader that is respected for who you are and what you represent, as opposed to a leader that has the power, is not respected, but people have to listen to. It always blows my mind.
It blows mine too. And so I think for me, I always remember a few things. Number one is that I'm living the dreams you know, that my ancestors couldn't even have fathomed. But they survived and suffered a hell of a lot to enable me to have the life that I'm having now. And that matters to me. Their sacrifice is important in my thinking. And it's important to me not to squander what I've been given. And so I'm like, with the shoulders of the giants that I stand on, why on earth would I not be impactful? Why on earth would I not be the best of the person that I am here to be? And I also don't want to be the bad ancestor. I don't want to be
Yeah.
I want to be the person whose name causes
Yeah,
everyone to
the
go
runt
like,
of the litter. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly. I'm somebody's, well, I'm three boys' mothers. I'm somebody's wife. And so it is also important to me to, be a good ancestor, to strengthen the shoulders that I'm creating for them to be able to stand on. I want them to have opportunities that I never have. I want them to see further and go further than I ever will. That is also important to me.
That is great. Yinka, you're blowing my mind away at the moment, and I know that the audience are enjoying this. I've got so many more questions, and because of the fantastic content that we're creating here, which I'll refer back to it again, in Leadership Hacks, my want was always to create content and to help people who are on their leadership journey, who want to go to that next level, but are trying to figure out who they are. And in doing that, hearing other people's stories, especially those who have been successful, it really helps them to shape their minds. And hopefully they resonate with a lot of it and think, oh, actually, well, you know what? Yinka is just herself. She's not trying to or pretending to be this corporate thing to fit into this box that will help her along that journey. She is the type of individual that is saying, this is who I am, and I am prepared to give you my all. And if that's good enough, then great. But if it's not, then this is who I am. I'm not going to change. Um, you have started, so within your business, one of the things you do is you run a money mind class masterclass, which I know has received fantastic feedback. What's the most common limiting belief about money you see in your clients, and how have you helped them break through it?
Um, one of the most common, well, a couple. Number one is that money is scarce. So there isn't enough of it to go around. And so you have to behave in very prudent and miserly ways in order to keep hold of it. That's one. Number two is that having more money makes you a different type of person to the person you actually are. This is a big one because we live in a world that celebrates money more than it celebrates people.
Hmm.
And so people tend to have the understanding that if someone has more money, then they are a certain type of person, for good or for bad. That's a huge myth. Is a really damaging one, because it sees people chasing money in order to hopefully get the respect or the sense of self-value that they want. And ultimately, that is a pursuit that finds you looking for love in all the wrong places. Or it sees people avoiding money because they feel that money will change them, will taint them, will turn them into someone that they don't want to be. And
People avoiding money.
yes,
Really?
totally.
See, and this is why I love these I get to learn. It's like I get these free classes as well. So you said people avoiding money, and
Yes.
in my head immediately I'm like, who avoids money? Like who? Show me them. What rationale? What reason do they give for avoiding money?
Um, so in the first instance, it's not a rational decision.
Oh, okay.
Oftentimes, it's a trauma response.
Hmm.
So, for example, there are a number of different ways that people avoid money. They avoid making more of it. They avoid when they receive money, they avoid keeping hold of it. So all of us know somebody who makes a lot of money but never has any money, because as soon as it comes in, they send it back out. People avoid money through lines and concepts like, as a woman, one of the most common expressions I hear is about women who are not doing what they're doing. I'm not in it for the money. I
Hmm.
hear that so often, and it blows my mind, because if you run a business, you're in it for the money. And therein lies the point. So many women are not running businesses because they are seeking to avoid being perceived as greedy or Machiavellian or
Hmm.
selfish. And therefore they underprice, they over deliver, and then they send their businesses out of business. And so the focus around money avoidance is ultimately about being afraid of money, and not understanding that money actually doesn't have any power except the power that you give to it. And so the work that I do in terms of helping people to shift and to change their beliefs, there are a number of different methodologies we use, but what I will say is a lot of the work that I do really does focus on both the mind and the body,
Hmm.
because as we are coming to discover more about the mind-body connection, it is the conscious mind, the cerebral mind, that is housed in the area of our head, but it is our unconscious mind, our subconscious mind, that is housed in our body. And so the way that is expressed is through our nervous system. It's through illness and wellness. I have met people who have, you know, been seeking, creating, significant amounts of cash in their business, and then they have their best month in business, and then they fall ill. And they fall ill immediately after they are in receipt of that exact thing that they have been chasing. Why? Because their subconscious mind does not feel safe in the presence
Hmm.
and in the environs of that level of money. And so their nervous system dysregulates, their subconscious mind causes physical illness. And their conscious mind is like, well, what the hell is going on? Because this is what I've been working for the last 7, 8,
Sure.
9, however many years. And so these are some of the experiences that people have. And this is the reason why my work, yes, we do, brain retraining and, using specific protocols to help people to recognize their beliefs, reframe them, release the beliefs that do not serve them, and to retrain the brain. But it's also about ensuring that we engage with and use somatic practices so that we can also bring the body on board. We can release tension. We can support the nervous system because the body holds the memories of the past. We can support the smaller versions of us who understood and misunderstood the world and then stored that as truth and as patterns in
Hmm.
our bodies, to be able to release those thoughts and beliefs so that we can align the mind and the body, align the conscious and the subconscious mind, and therefore be in a state of real kind of catalytic progress.
Yinka, when it comes to money, one thing that's always frustrated me is this may, in fact, this may be an opinion of mine. I've always thought that there are negative connotations associated to money. And what I mean by that, as in money, in wanting money and wanting lots of it. What are your thoughts around? Do you feel that there are negative connotations around money per se? So would you? I mean, you're speaking here saying confidently you run your business to make money, and that is a primary goal of yours. There are some people that will hear that, and and I think it will irk them. It may send shudders down their spine, and for a long time, I mean, and again, I'm going back to my 20s to 30s. I was all about the money, and I was very vocal with it. But I started to be less vocal because the world was telling me, "Oh, I'm wrong. I should not want money." So then I just wanted it in my head, but wouldn't speak about it so much. But it was always a, "Oh, well, you guys say what you want, but this is what I want," and I had my reasons for why I wanted it. So just on that, what's your experience? Are there negative connotations in the clients in which you work with, or in the world in which you have seen, or is this just an Obi thing in my head?
No, it's a social contract.
Right.
So we have been taught certain things about money, and therefore we have been taught about certain things about the kinds of people who have money. And so the challenge that we have, and this is a powerful truism that I definitely believe, is so powerful is our mind that if you believe a lie for long enough, it starts to act as truth in your life.
Hmm.
And so it will start to present as your truth, even though it's not the truth. And so we have this social contract where we are taught that wanting money is a bad thing. Wanting money is, for me personally, it makes perfect sense. And I talk about this really unapologetically. It is my intention to be obnoxiously wealthy. I am excellent at making money. It is my intention to make as much money as I possibly can
Things I love to hear. Things
because
I love to hear.
it is important to me to make money so that I can send my money on assignment to things that I think are important. I don't think the things that are important in this world have the money that they need. And I can adopt two strategies in that regard. I can complain about the things that I think are important, not having enough money, or I can gather far more money than I will ever personally need and then send what is not assigned to me to the things that I think are important. And so it is a social conditioning, and within every culture. Every culture has one form of it or another around the story that a desire for money is bad. A desire for money, in my opinion, isn't bad, but ultimately it can only be tempered with what we were talking about earlier, which is values embodiment. I desire to create money because money is a resource, and I desire to be resourced. Exactly. I don't desire money to make me feel better about myself as a human because the money that I make isn't for me. I'm blessed to be a blessing. And the more blessed I am, the more I am able to bless others. So making money is a skill like any other. And someone who is amazing at cooking wouldn't turn around and say, I don't want to make too much food. I don't want to help, make too many meals.
Or for it to be too tasty that people
Right,
just,
for it to be too
yeah,
tasty, for it to help, to fill too many bellies. They would never say that.
yeah.
So from my personal perspective, I think it's important. Um, I would love for everybody to think differently about money. I also know that that isn't everybody's calling, but it sure as hell is mine. And I'm absolutely going to fulfill on that. Everybody doesn't need to have all the money in the world. And to be honest, everybody could, but not everybody will. And I totally accept
Mhm.
that. Um, but yeah, I'm going to make mine. I'm
No,
gonna make mine. I'm gonna make
it's
more.
it's
I'm
a
gonna
very,
make even more
yeah.
than that, and I'm gonna change the world with the money that comes into my world. Because the more money I have in my hands, the better the world I get to create and shape for all of us.
I love what you said as part of your response there. I am a blessing to be a bless. I'm a blessing to be a blessing.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
blessed to be a blessing.
blessing. Sorry, you have the unwavering confidence in yourself and the understanding that you are blessed. and I know I've talked to you about this off camera before, genuinely, you are a magnet. You're a voice that people will learn from, and you equally will continue to learn. I know your ego is in check too, which is great to know. I wonder what your three boys would say. I wonder what your three boys would say if I was to speak to them. But look, you're raising confident black boys, and I make the point of saying black boys as I am raising confident black boys too. But what intentional conversations are you having with them about confidence, about identity, about their place in the world as young black men?
This is one of I'm really excited to talk more about this because I am, first of all, you're absolutely right in saying that I am having intentional conversations with them. And it is so clear to me that if I don't raise my children, someone else will. And so there aren't any questions that are off limits. There aren't any questions or topics that we don't talk about. Of course, we talk about faith, we talk about God, we talk about that building that relationship, in the spiritual. But we talk about slang, we talk about Andrew Tate, we talk about consent, we talk about sex, we talk about money, we talk about the fact that they are never going to be able to do something that will cause me not to love them. We talk about the difference between love and like, that they don't get to be mean or horrible or shady shysters to other people and expect people to like them just because they're loved. And so we have very fascinating, probably very unorthodox conversations. But I take the incredible foundations and seeds and soil and everything that I was given in my childhood and everything that my husband was given in his. And we talk about it all the time. What do we want to pass on? What do we want to get rid of? What do we want to break the cycle of? What do we want to continue to embody? And I'm so grateful. My husband didn't grow up with his father. And so every day I'm grateful that my sons have the opportunity, to grow up with theirs. My sons also have the opportunity because my parents are still together. They're coming into 53 years of marriage this year. So they're 52 years my parents are together.
Fantastic, and
Yeah,
congratulations to them.
so exciting. And, that's through some real hell and high water. And I get that is a real privilege. It is not something that is common. It's not something that everybody gets to see or enjoy. And so, as I said, in those scenarios, my sons have, their parents have been together for, 18 plus years. Their grandparents have been together for 50 plus years. How will we not say we're blessed? Like, does that add up to? That
Yeah.
is a blessing. That is a challenge. That is the most powerful training ground for relationships, for understanding, for being able to forge something and create something quite unique and something better. And so, but yeah, to my sons don't have a different parent. I mean, they don't have a different mum. So my sons probably think I'm a little crazy, a little extra, a little annoying, all the things that I'm sure other sons think of their mothers. But what I would hope that they know is that they're loved. What I would hope that they know is that I really do trust them, and I hope I've built a foundation in them to know that they can trust their own voice, and they know that I will respect their voice in their decisions as they come of age to make them. But more importantly, I think I would love them to know that they are unequivocally celebrated. And that doesn't mean that I have to agree with everything that they do. I definitely don't agree with everything they do. You should smell their trainers.
You're saying that one of my sons has done something with his hair that I mean, if I had hair I'd be pulling it out, which I don't. But you know what, I one of the things you've said there in your answer about making sure that you have told them that there's nothing they can do that will mean that mummy no longer loves you, the safety and the comfort that will bring to them.
Yeah, and it's important because it's interesting. I reflected quite significantly on the concept of unconditional love fairly recently. I've seen a few posts about, and you see it when, Mother's Day, Father's Day comes out,
Mm.
you see the spectrum of posts, people who have no relationship with their parents, people whose parents are their whole world. And a few times I saw posts about unconditional love, and I was like, I don't know unconditional love. I didn't, the love that I grew up with was incredibly conditional. And it doesn't mean that that was right or wrong, but we
Yeah.
were taught very clearly that if you were obedient, you were loved. And if you
Yeah.
were not, you were not. Well,
Yeah.
and it's not that you were not loved when you were
I
disobedient,
understand what you mean. Yeah.
but there were rules and conditions.
Hmm.
And therefore, it caused us to behave in certain ways. It caused us to show up in certain ways. And it caused us to perform for our parents.
Mm.
And the thing is that in a world where you have to, where you feel like you can feel like you have to perform in so many spaces, I don't want my kids to feel like they need to perform for me. I've already said to them, I'm not going to agree with everything you do. I'm not going to like everything that you like. You are going to do things, and I'm going to think that some of those things are abhorrent or terrible, or that doesn't mean I never want you to think that you can't tell me what you did.
Yeah.
The only time we're going to fall out is if you lie to me. So just tell me the truth. Even if you were wrong, tell me the truth, and
Yeah.
I can work with that. But also, I don't, you, there are a range of emotions that are conditional. I won't always like you. I won't always agree with you. I may not always get you, but I will always love you. And that is a contract that I have made with myself, and I get to give as a gift to you. And I hope that gives me the chance to do something a little bit differently to how I felt. What it adapts what I received.
Mm.
And I'm grateful for what I received, because if I didn't receive that, then I wouldn't have reflected that, and I wouldn't have known different, and I wouldn't want to do different.
This brings me to my last question, because I have no comeback on what you've just shared. I think from a parenting perspective, there are so many nuggets that you've just dropped in there, and not everybody is a parent, so not everybody has had the opportunity to experience what it is like to raise a child. But for those who have, I think there's a lot of learning there. I think I struggle with unconditional love, as in I don't agree with it. But again, I think that's something for another day. My final question to you is: looking at everything that you're building, from your business to the community work to raising boys, what legacy would you want to leave, or what legacy do you want to leave, and what's the boldest vision you have had for the next chapter of your life? I already know you're going to be a gazillionaire.
um, I'd like to feel like I'm leaving a legacy of love. I'm leaving a legacy of truth. I'm leaving a legacy of what can only be described as magic. In that I am making real and visible and possible things that, until people get to see them, they thought they were impossible. And so as I think about, and again, this is an exercise that I've done a few times, and I ask my clients to do as well. It's called a eulogy exercise, where you write the eulogy that you would want to be read at your funeral when you
Oh,
are gone.
love
And
that. Okay.
it is a game-changing exercise. Because there's a version of it called the deathbed exercise, but such is my own level of delulu that if
Mhm.
I did a deathbed exercise, I would tell myself that I would jump up and I would
Yeah.
live another 25 years. Yeah,
Mhm.
right. So the eulogy is powerful because you really are gone. And that's the thing. As I think about that exercise, it is my prayer that my children will read that eulogy, which
Mm.
therefore means that it is also my prayer and my intention that I will never know the graves of my children.
Mhm.
And so, but they are the ones who will be reading that, and who they have known me to be and how I have shown up for them is the biggest and most important of the legacies that I will be leaving. Yes, to the the 10,000 women with the £1 million businesses from the work that I'm doing. Yes, to the work that I'm doing with Rich and Rested. Yes, to my passion in seeing Africa rising. Yes, to all of the impact that I seek to make in the area and conversations that we as mothers are having with boys. Yes, to all of that. And the most important legacy that matters to me beyond that of my faith is what those 3 men, and they won't be young by God's grace by the time they're reading my eulogy, but the most important legacy to me is not even just what they will say or be able to say on that day, but how they feel about me on that day, around that time, after I'm gone. That for me is a more important eulogy, and ultimately what I focus on, even in terms of this next chapter. They are very different in age. So I have elder teens and I still have a 7-year-old. And so, but yeah, my life, my focus, my legacy is very much geared towards them understanding the truth of my heart as it relates to the business that I want to run, the impact I want to make in the world, but the love that I have for them, and that love being a catalyst and a salve and a game changer and a transformative agent for any and everything that they and every dream that they have, is part of the legacy that I'm seeking to build with the life that I've been given.
Amen to that. But what we are not going to do is we're not going to finish on the death of Yinka. That is not going to happen, because we want
You
you
know what
around.
it is? Yeah, we're all going, and to be honest, like, it was the Stoics back in the day. Always, they used to have, people walking behind them, memento mori, remember death.
Yeah,
Stop acting like you
that is
have
a real
all
thing.
the
Yeah,
time
yeah,
in the world. Stop acting as though what you do, you're always going to be here.
yeah.
And so I don't have the activation around death that many people
Mm,
do.
mhm.
I think it helps me to have a sense of urgency where many people can be like, it's a Friday
Yeah,
afternoon.
manana,
Yeah.
manana. Yeah,
But it's the only Friday afternoon with this day at this time that we will
yeah,
ever see.
yeah. Um, Cala Success Systems.
Yep.
This is your business.
Yep.
Tell me about it. Pitch to the world. Why should they get in contact with you? What can they get in contact with you for? What can you do for them?
Well, Kala Success Systems is on a mission to support women to create wealth in and through their businesses. And so I get in contact with me if you want to see improvements, and truly like transformational improvements in your business as it relates to cash flow and strategy, and as it relates to you as an individual in terms of your own mindset, energetics, habits, money and business thinking. They are the things that I help most with. And yeah, I support women to really change their relationship with their money, with their businesses, and then ultimately with themselves, so that they also can redefine that success and truly create a legacy, a journey, and an outcome that means that they truly thrived, not just at the end of the journey, but along the way too.
And
Rich,
how do they get in contact with you?
I was going to say Rich and Rested for the win. And they get in contact with me. Find me on LinkedIn, drop me an email at hello@calasuccess.com. I'm actually across all socials with the name as you see on the screen there. So that's Facebook, X, Instagram, but LinkedIn is my primary platform. I am there every day. And yeah, my DMs are warm and welcoming for any and all women who really want to change their relationship with their businesses, their bank accounts, and their lives.
Yinka, it has been an absolute pleasure. You are a blessing to the world. You're a blessing to me too, because you don't have to do this. You've given up your time, and I really appreciate that. To all of my hackers out there, I hope you've enjoyed the show. I certainly have. I'm looking forward to going back and listening back to this too. And I look forward to seeing you again on another episode of Leadership Hacks. Thanks, Yinka. Take
Thanks for
care.
having me, Obi. I
No
appreciate
worries.
it.